November 8, 2009. In a spacious villa in the peaceful town of Changanacherry, Kerala, India, the usual early morning atmosphere was broken by a loud scream. The elderly man living in that house, a wealthy Vietnamese American who had just returned home, was found dead in a very unusual condition. His body was covered in red chili powder from the floor to the pillows. The front and back doors of the house were wide open, and most suspiciously, his two loyal Pomeranian dogs did not bark at all during the night. At first, everyone thought this was a simple robbery and murder, but the small clues at the scene, plus a series of hidden conflicts in the family that lasted for many years, revealed a truth that was 100 times more horrifying. A ton of tragedy buried deep under the shell of a happy family. And the murderer was the daughter-in-law who he loved, cared for, and placed all his trust in. Let's dive into this shocking case right away. The victim in this story is Mr. Bascar Kuranavar, a man who once had a dream life in the United States. Over the years, he worked hard and accumulated a large fortune, including real estate, bank deposits, and many other investments. But what made him happiest was not money, but his family. He had a son named Binu, a gentle but mentally retarded young man who often just followed other people's orders and had almost no opinions. Therefore, both he and his wife had a constant worry. If they died, what would Binu's future be like? In 2001, hoping to marry off their son to stabilize his life, his family agreed to match Binu with Sharon, a young, educated girl from a poor family. Sharon agreed to marry Binu, partly because she saw a stable future in this wealthy family. They quickly settled in the United States. There, Sharon gave birth to a baby girl, Mr. Bascar's granddaughter, named Aishwarya. Mr. Bascar loved his little granddaughter very much and considered his son's family the greatest comfort in his life. Many years later, after his wife passed away, he decided to retire and return to his hometown, Changanacherry town, Kerala. Here, he built a spacious villa on a 1-acre plot of land, nearly 4,000 square meters, and welcomed his son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter from the US to live with him. That seemingly perfect life began to show signs of cracks. Inside the seemingly perfect family picture was Sharon, the daughter-in-law who used to be grateful, but now was the center of countless troubles. In the US, after giving birth and starting a job, Sharon began to change. She had new friends, approached a free life, dressed freely, started drinking, and gradually got involved in extramarital relationships. Sadly, Binu, the mentally handicapped husband, is almost incapable of recognizing or coping with this change. All the burden falls on Mr. Bascar, the old father who has just lost his wife and is worried about the future of his children and grandchildren. And from here, hidden conflicts in the family begin to accumulate. Sympathy turns into suspicion. Kindness turns into exploitation. Affection turns into hatred. Sharon, who once entered the house as a daughter-in-law, is now the trigger for an unimaginable tragedy. Life in the Changanacherry mansion seemed peaceful, but in reality it was a maelstrom of growing tension. The family conflicts between Bascar and Sharon were no longer simmering. They had become public and bitter. Since returning to India, Mr. Bascar had often witnessed strangers coming to the mansion at odd times, early in the morning, late at night, even when he was not home. They were neither relatives nor friends. When he asked Sharon questions, she would only give vague or evasive answers. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, but his suspicions grew so strong that he had to secretly hire a confidant to follow and report back. And then, the truth broke out. Sharon not only had illicit relationships in the US, but also continued to have an affair with a man named Basith Ali right in the house where he lived. Mr. Bascar's anger could no longer be contained. He bluntly confronted Sharon, asking her to stop. But contrary to expectations, Sharon showed defiance, even brazenly declaring, "If you want me to stay and take care of your child, transfer all your assets to us. If not, I will leave." Those were no longer the words of a daughter-in-law. They were threats. The tension reached its peak when Sharon stole her late mother-in-law's credit card and spent it recklessly in the US. When the bill arrived home, Mr. Bascar confronted Sharon, but she denied it. As a last resort, the family had no choice but to report it to the police. Through investigation, Sharon was convicted of financial fraud and sentenced to a month in prison. It was the first time, and also the clearest warning. This daughter-in-law was willing to destroy the family's honor to achieve her own goals. From then on, all respect between the two disappeared. Sharon quit her job, becoming indifferent and dissatisfied. Mr. Bascar tried to stay calm because he loved his little granddaughter and because his son was not mentally capable of enduring the storm. But his worries about the future grew. In a last-ditch effort, he suggested, "If you really want to stick with Binu and take care of her grandchildren, I will transfer all the assets to your name. But you have to change." Sharon pretended to agree, but soon everything was back to normal. Unable to bear it any longer, he revoked the old will, removed Sharon from all her savings, assets, and inheritance rights. He left all the assets to Binu's son, including a mansion, an apartment worth several crores, and a deposit of over 14 lakh rupees to take care of her granddaughter's future. And from that moment on, Sharon harbored a deep hatred. In her eyes, Mr. Bascar was no longer her father-in-law, but the only obstacle preventing her from taking over the comfortable life in her hands. And then, with her lover Basith Ali, she began to plan the murder, cold-blooded, detailed, and cruel to the end. On the night of November 7th, 2009, while the entire Changanacherry town slept, inside that magnificent mansion, a brutal murder plan was gradually being carried out. Sharon, only 27 years old, was the one who started it all. She had prepared carefully. That day, she asked her driver to buy sleeping pills, then secretly mixed them into the food of the 2 Pomeranian dogs in the house. The loyal dogs, who were very sensitive to strangers, soon fell into a deep sleep. Waiting until late at night when the entire house was dark, Sharon quietly unlocked both the front and back doors, making way for the 3 murderers who were waiting in the dark. Basith Ali, her lover, and 2 accomplices, Nadine and Shao Rashid. Around midnight, the 3 of them sneaked into the house without encountering any resistance. Under the direction of Sharon herself, who lived in the house, they went straight to Mr. Bascar's room. In their hands were a cloth soaked in chloroform. They went to the old man's bed where he was sleeping soundly. But the plan did not go smoothly. As soon as the chloroform cloth was pressed against his face, Mr. Bascar woke up with a start, struggling violently, trying to get up to escape. He did not scream, perhaps for fear of waking his granddaughter. But his eyes filled with fear and resentment caused one of the 3 assassins to quickly push him down on the bed, covering his mouth with a pillow, while the other pressed his foot hard on his stomach to hold him down. Basith Ali, Sharon's lover, tightened a towel around his neck, so tight that not a single moan could be heard. Mr. Bascar died in silence. After the murder, the 3 ransacked the room, taking valuables including cash and jewelry, with a total estimated value of about 1,11,000 rupees, about $2,300. However, they did not stop there. Fearing that the police would use sniffer dogs to investigate the scene, they asked Sharon to bring in a bag of chili powder, taken straight from the kitchen. They then sprinkled it all over the room and on the victim's body to confuse the smell, avoiding detection by sniffer dogs. The crime was disguised as a robbery and murder. Everything happened quickly, without anyone knowing. When they left, they closed the door ajar, as if everything happened by accident. In one night, a father, a grandfather, the person who raised, protected, and sheltered, was murdered by his own daughter-in-law. On the morning of November 8, 2009, in the soft morning light of the Kerala countryside, no one would have guessed that the magnificent mansion in Changanacherry was hiding a terrible crime. As usual, the housekeeper woke up early to clean. But the first thing that struck him was that both the front and back doors were wide open. In a family as careful as Mr. Bascar's, this almost never happened. Slightly unsettled, the housekeeper woke the driver to check. They both went inside and walked around the house. As they approached Mr. Bascar's bedroom, they saw a layer of dark red powder on the floor, from the door to the bed. At the time, they were not sure what it was. Immediately, they called Sharon, Mr. Bascar's daughter-in-law, to come and see. Sharon pretended to be panicked, then went into the room alone. And then, she screamed dramatically, calling out to everyone, "Dad is lying motionless. He's not breathing anymore." The driver rushed in. Mr. Bascar was lying still on the bed, his face covered by blankets and pillows, and his body was covered with countless chili powder stains. The entire scene in the bedroom was exactly like a break-in and robbery. Sharon quickly informed the neighbors, who were the first to run over to help. Not long after, the local police also arrived at the scene. By this time, the victim was dead, apparently not from illness or accident. What immediately caught the attention of the investigators there were no signs of vandalism or forced entry. The two loyal dogs had not barked at all during the night. Chili powder had been scattered all over the house, even on the body, something highly unusual. At first, Sharon concocted a story that a burglar had broken in at night, murdered Mr. Bascar, and robbed him. She reported that around 1.11 lakh rupees and some land documents were missing. The police did not immediately dismiss the case, but they were not fooled. They quietly narrowed down who was in the house on the night of the murder: Sharon, the maid, and the driver. 3 people, 3 accounts, but one of them was hiding a terrible secret. Immediately after confirming that Mr. Bascar Kuranavar was dead, the police sealed off the scene and carried out a thorough investigation. The victim's room showed no signs of forced entry or forced entry. There was no broken glass, broken lock, or forced entry. This immediately raised suspicions about the burglar theory. The only thing unusual was the red chili powder, spread thickly on the floor, on the bed, and on Mr. Bascar's body. Investigators realized that this was not the action of a normal thief, but a deliberate act to distract the scent, which could be dealt with by police dogs. The police immediately requested a sample of the chili powder and sent it for analysis. The result: the powder matched the chili in the family's kitchen. The autopsy was conducted on November 9, 2009. The forensic report stated, there were many bruises on the neck, chest, and face. There were obvious signs of asphyxiation. Cause of death: strangulation and pressure on the chest, leading to suffocation. More importantly, the old man's body had signs of resistance, proving that he was still conscious when he was murdered and tried to struggle to escape. From this, the police eliminated the possibility of being killed suddenly in his sleep. The police began questioning each person present in the house. The maid and the driver were cooperative. Their statements were consistent, and there was no sign of deception. Sharon, the daughter-in-law, was extremely controlling, leading the story and repeatedly emphasizing the thief-murder hypothesis. That made the police wary. While investigating in the surrounding residential area, an important witness appeared. The next-door neighbor recounted, "At around 10:45 p.m. on November 7th, I saw a strange man standing in front of Mr. Bascar's gate. When I asked him, he said his car had broken down, he was looking for a place to go to the toilet, and called for help." This detail matched the time frame perfectly. The police followed the neighbor's description and discovered Basith Ali, Sharon's lover, who had been in and out of the villa many times as a business partner with Mr. Bascar. Basith was immediately put under suspicion, and the police traced his cell phone. From there, everything fell apart. Call records, text messages, GPS location, all pointed to his presence at the scene the night of the murder. But what really cracked the case was Sharon's interrogation. After nearly 4 days of maintaining her composure, Sharon began to falter when questioned about the chili powder, the hidden camera Mr. Bascar had installed, and the last call from the neighbor. She was pushed into a corner, and then she confessed everything. "I have nothing left. He took everything away from me. He left me nothing. I just want it to end." Sharon detailed each step. She planned and directed. She drugged the dog. She opened the door for Basith and his accomplices to enter the house. She brought out the chili powder to distract the investigation. Basith Ali and his two accomplices, Nadine and Shah Rashid, were arrested shortly after the confession. The police also found text messages, a map of their home, and phone calls that lasted throughout the night of the murder on their phones. The entire case was solved in less than a week, an investigative feat that shocked the entire Kerala region. After completing the investigation and collecting sufficient evidence, the Kerala police formally filed the charge sheet in less than 90 days from the date of the crime, a processing speed considered extremely fast in the Indian legal system. In June 2010, the trial of Sharon, Basith Ali, and two accomplices, Nadine and Shah Rashid, officially took place. All three were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, illegal entry, fraudulent crime scene, concealment of evidence, and stolen property. During the trial, Sharon appeared cold and unrepentant, constantly changing her testimony, even blaming Basith, saying that she was just the one who was manipulated. However, the court did not accept this argument. The irrefutable evidence presented to the court included Sharon's signed confession, transcripts of phone calls between Sharon and Basith before, during, and after the crime, CCTV footage of the suspect's arrival, analysis of the chili powder content matched that in the family kitchen. A witness who was a neighbor confirmed seeing Basith outside the gate on the night of the murder. After more than 6 weeks of trial, the verdict was announced in July 2010. Sharon, the mastermind, was sentenced to double life prison for cruelty and lack of remorse. Basith Ali, along with Nadine and Shah Rashid, were each sentenced to life in prison. The victim's family, especially Mr. Bascar's daughter, burst into tears upon hearing the verdict. During the trial, she repeatedly described her father's last-ditch efforts to protect his granddaughter's assets and the price he paid with his own life. Public opinion in Kerala was also in an uproar, especially when the media discovered that Sharon was an educated person, had worked in an office, and had been wholeheartedly supported by Mr. Bascar. The image of the gentle daughter-in-law completely collapsed before the public. For a period after her conviction, Sharon repeatedly appealed for clemency, citing her status as a single mother, mental health issues, and repentant. Despite repeated rejections, Sharon was unexpectedly granted 60-day bail in late 2012, followed by controversial medical bail. In total, Sharon was released on bail for a total of 444 days, which many journalists have called a legal blemish. Many questions have been raised. Who was behind the intervention? Why was a person sentenced to a double life sentence allowed to leave prison so often? To this day, this remains a major source of controversy in Indian public opinion, making people wonder about the relationship between justice and power. In a society where family trust is considered the most sacred foundation, the case of Mr. Bascar Kuranavar is like a cold knife piercing that trust. A man who had traveled halfway around the world, carrying with him many aspirations for reunion and peace in his old age, was finally murdered by the daughter-in-law he had once raised. Love, responsibility, forgiveness, all were betrayed by greed and naked desire. The saddest thing is not only Mr. Bascar's death, but also the dark future of his granddaughter Aishwarya, an innocent child caught between her mother's crime and her father's shortcomings. She grew up carrying the unspoken scar that her grandfather died because of her mother's hand. What lessons remain? That kindness, if misplaced, can be abused to the point of costing one's life. That forgiveness does not mean blindness. That wealth, when it becomes the sole goal of the greedy, can turn a loved one into a cold-blooded murderer. Perhaps Mr. Bascar did not expect that his lifelong efforts to protect the future of his children and grandchildren would end in a tragedy of their own making. The case is over. The court has pronounced its verdict. But justice sometimes cannot heal the wounds left by the human heart. When greed has no boundaries, the family, the most sacred place, can also become the most dangerous.